Welcome, everyone, to this week's version of The Spiritual View with myself as well as my co host Sheila and Kim. And we are actually pre recording today so that we can drop this episode on the holiday Monday, which is a holiday in Alberta. And we have a guest that we are super excited to bring on today. Her name is Gillian. So, welcome, Gillian.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me into this beautiful space with you ladies.
Yeah, absolutely. We're so happy that you're here. And so, what we know so far about Gillian is that she is a yoga teacher and she is also a QHHT practitioner. And she has her own business called Awakened Past Life Regression. Interesting. I put roots in there. There's no roots. So, Gillian, why don't we start off by can you just share a little bit about yourself with us and with our listeners?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so I think I'll start from the beginning, if that's okay with you. I chose to come into this life with some early childhood discomfort and some trauma. And I wanted to use the term chose because it's really important to me. I think that knowledge came to me later in life, that we're able to choose, and that before we come to this earth, we do choose and we get to decide, where we arrive and what we're going to go through. And before having that information, it's really hard to connect with the idea that the universe is doing things for you rather than doing things to you, right? And so especially people who have, and I know a lot of people who have had things happen when they're really young, and they wonder when they get to adulthood why that happened. And it's hard to really figure that out until you realize that you chose to be here and you chose to do that and you chose to figure out how to overcome that. So my life started with some early stuff going on when I was about 6 years old. My parents got divorced, which is pretty normal. Lots of parents get divorced. But the next time I recall meeting my dad after he left my mom, he introduced me to his baby, which I can remember as a really early memory of what, right? Like, what is happening? This is the person who's supposed to care and protect me. And that's all that I know. But he's gone off into the world with his own agenda, making a new family. And so he drifted in and out of my life. And I can remember at one point realizing it had been about 15 years since I had had a conversation with him. So that really embedded some early stuff in my life about trust with other human beings. And then my mom got remarried, which was all fine at the beginning. But then after a little while, my stepfather started to become abusive towards my sister and I. And so that was like just bringing a whole other suitcase of stuff on top of trust of human beings, and especially of men. But I just kept going in life because you're young and you're not really sure why all these things are happening to you or what they mean. And so I just went into my teenage years where I became really rebellious, and I started just, stuffing all those emotions down so deep as I could, probably with lots of drugs and alcohol, which thank goodness I let go of those later on. But in retrospect, it's easy to look back now and say my biggest defense mechanism that I built was about keeping people far away from me. So creating a distance, right? Everyone at arm's length. If I don't get too close to people, then I won't get hurt. And this really played out for me in romantic relationships. I can remember having a high school boyfriend, and he was really sweet and kind. But in my head, I was like, this is my high school boyfriend. So at the end of high school, this will be over. And it was. And then I moved to Australia and I had an Australian boyfriend, and remember saying, well, when I go home, this will be over. And then it was. And that was great. And this kind of played out for a few years with a man, and then I'd move on. And then when I was in about my mid-20s, I met a man. And this man came strolling into my life, and he was just like strutted in, and he's just waving these red flags everywhere he goes, right? He's just like, hey, look at me. I think I like you, but I don't know. You know that guy, right? And so I fall, so I fall head over heels in love with this man. And I'm like, this is it. This is the one. He wants nothing to do with me. It's perfect. And so I think that's where my healing started. And so I got to this place where I was like, wait a minute, I'm in love with this person and I want to spend my life with them, but I'm broken, not them. I'm broken. There's something broken inside of me because I don't let myself connect with other people. And that brought me to therapy. And I can remember walking into a therapist's office and saying, oh, hey, I'm here and I just want to learn how to make this person love me. And, I want to be good enough for them. And my therapist just laughing at me and saying, well, that's not what we're going to do here. You're going to learn to love yourself, right? And you're going to learn to figure out why you're here and what you need. And so it's this really beautiful intertwining of healing and spirituality, which I now realize are just the same thing. Right? It's that we've been brought here for these lessons, and every time we heal from them and we learn and we grow, we become more spiritually evolved. And so that's where it really started for me. And I can remember near the end of this relationship with this man, because obviously it ended. This did not last forever. I went to a party and I have this moment that really sticks out in my mind. And this girl approached me and she told me that she was a psychic. She said, I have psychic abilities and I'd like to get your permission to tell you some things that I see. And I said, sure, absolutely. Let me know. And she said, so I don't think you should ever break up with him. And I was like, oh, okay. And she said, I see your life together if you stay together, and it'll be really hard. And you'll always love him a little bit more than he'll love you, but he'll stay with you and you'll make it work. She said, but if you break up, he's going to move on and he's going to be happy and you're never, ever, ever going to get over it. And it's so funny because in retrospect, I'm like, this is exactly what the universe needed to give me and that I needed to hear in that moment, because my first instinct was, you don't get to tell me that, right? I get to choose. I get to choose my life and what it looks like and what I'm going to create. And I had this deep-rooted belief system about that. A few years earlier, I was working in a bar and the same thing happened to me. A bartender came up to me and he said, my friend here's a psychic and he's sitting at the bar. Do you want to know what he said about you? And I got this tray of drinks in my hand. I'm standing there. I'm like, yeah, let me know. He's like, he said that girl's going to have a lot of babies really quickly. And then I just started crying and these tears started pouring down my eyes. And I thought, what? No, I don't want to have a lot of babies really quickly. That sounds horrible. And so I left that day at the bar and I went directly to the doctor's and I got a prescription for birth control because I wasn't on it. And I moved forward with my life. And knowing what I know now, because I have two beautiful children, had I accidentally got pregnant in my early 20s, I probably would have had a lot of babies because babies are beautiful and, they're cute and gorgeous and I love them. But I got to choose. So when this girl tells me that I'm not going to be okay if I break up with this guy, it's really important to me because it's almost like a fight. Now I want to break up with him just to prove that I can be okay or that this isn't going to take down my life. And so, of course, this relationship ends because it has to end. It's horrible. And as I'm moving this guy out of my house, I decide to make the choice to move my TV out. And I tell myself that this is it. I'm done. I'm done with distracting myself from life. I used to walk around as a small child. And when I first learned how the world worked, I was so confused when people said, you need to go to school. You'll go to school and you'll learn. Then you're going to get a job and then you're going to get married. Then you're going to have kids. Then you're going to retire and then you're going to die. And just being like, but why? But why are we here? That doesn't make any logical sense to me, right? There's no why behind that. And then I just had these things happen early in life. And then I just pushed all of it away. I forgot, right? And I just started coping with life and forgot that I wanted to know why we were here. I wanted to know why I was here and what the purpose of all of this was. And so during this time, I start diving deep into spirituality. I start reading a lot of books and I find the Shivananda ashram in the Bahamas. And the universe tells me, this is good. You want to do this. You should go. And then my ego mind says, well, I can't just pack up my bags and live in an ashram because everyone I know will think I'm nuts and I've lost it. And here I go. But what I could do is I could become a yoga instructor. And I have no desire to teach yoga at this point. I'm looking for an excuse to take me somewhere so that I can live in a spiritual place. And so I say to myself in this whole conversation I'm having in my head. I'll go, but I don't want to pay for it. So what I need from you, universe, is I need you to let me win the lottery. And I don't know if anyone's ever had that conversation with the universe before, but it's good to throw out there. I'll do something for you because I know you're telling me this is right, but I want you to do something for me. So I said, okay, please just let me win the lottery. I'm going to go buy a ticket. We'll do this and I will go. I'm going to pack up everything and go. So I go to the store and I buy this ticket. I hold it close near me and then I come back a couple days and I'm sure I slap it down on the counter, right? Like, this is it. I'm going. And then I hear that little, woohoo, you've won. And I'm like, oh my God, I've won. And then I look up and see that I've won $1. And I laugh out loud because that's what I asked for, right? Mm-hmm. And then I start going through the motions in my head of, oh crap, I have made a promise to the universe that if I win the lottery, I have to go and do this. So now I have to figure out how to make this happen. And so that's what I did. And I still actually keep the dollar. So I checked out my dollar. I took it with me. I put it in this beautiful little silk bag and I keep it in my room as a reminder that the universe will give you exactly what you need, right? If you ask, and in the form that is best suited to you, because obviously I could figure out how to afford it because I did. And I went, and then that opened a real spiritual door for me. Definitely. I came back and I started to heal from everything. I found the love of my life and I got married and I had 2 beautiful children. And through the grace of Sheila, I began to teach yoga, which I didn't intend to do, but stumbled right into her path and quietly asked one day if she would mind if maybe I tried teaching at her studio. And our relationship spawned from there, which was really beautiful. And then, the next thing that happened to me was just recently, I stumbled into QHHT, which is quantum healing hypnosis, by Dolores Cannon. If you don't know anything about her, she's absolutely amazing. And I wanted to take that training. So this time I went back to the universe and I said, okay, I want to do this. If you want me to do this, I need you to give me the money to do it because I don't have the money this time. So you have to give me the money. And then I started playing around with manifesting and went on with my life. And I then said, okay, I'm just going to do something simple. I'd really like to teach more yoga. I'm only teaching yoga 1 day a week. I'm going to put it out in the universe. I'm going to meditate on it, more yoga, more yoga. And then the very next day, my sister messages me and she says, hey, there's a yoga studio by my house that's hiring. You should apply. And within a week, I have a new job teaching yoga, which is just so fascinating, right? Like how if you open yourself up and it's aligned with your path, it will be given directly to you. And then I just keep going on with my life. And a little while later, I get a call from someone. So this story is a little convoluted, but basically I agreed to do some paperwork for someone years ago. And they said, look, when I get the money from this, I'll give you a portion of the money. And I said, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. I'll just do the paperwork. Like, that's fine. And then forgot all about it. And so they called me and said, have you checked your bank account? And I said, no, why? I said, just check your bank account. And I opened my bank account and there's enough money to take this course, which is fascinating. So magic money coming out of nowhere, right? To keep pushing me forward on my path, which kind of brings me to where I am today. So I just wanted to take some time because I think that storytelling is very powerful. And I know whenever I connect with another human being and they tell me the stories about how the universe opened up and created space for them and showed them how to grow, that it just raises my vibration. It brings me closer. And so that's my story, which brings me to today.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. There's so many cool things that have happened to you throughout your life. And I love how you tell your story.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And I'm sure all of us have questions for you. And I actually want to start by asking you a question that's actually, if I'm truthful, it's like a little bit more from a personal perspective. Like, I really want to know, because I've always wanted to do this and I haven't done it yet. What's it like to live in an ashram?
It's pretty magical. It's hard work because you have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and you start with your meditation. But I mean, we were next to the ocean, so we had ocean on each side of us. And you get up and you meditate, and then it's satsang happens next. So you do some chanting and some beautiful spiritual talks, and then you just dive right into yoga training, doing karma work. So we all cook together, we all clean together. I lived in a tent while I was there. So it was a really neat experience of just collective people coming together. And the biggest thing that stood out for me, I remember I went there and one of the teachers said, "This is how it's going to play out. Let me tell you, week 1, you're super excited. You think this is so cool and you're happy to be here. Week 2, you start to question everyone's belief system and you wonder, is this right for me? I don't know if I like this. Week 3, you're starting to feel a lot of resistance. And you're like, this feels like a lot. You guys are doing some really weird things now. Week 4, you're just in bliss state and everything is just completely kosher. You've absorbed everything. And that was exactly how it played out for me. So by the time I left, I was just this floating person who had lost my ego entirely. It was pretty neat.
That's very cool. And is there one maybe like profound thing that happened to you when you were there? I'm sure there was many, but if you had to share like just one.
I think it was the moment that I let go of attachment, that I realized that all my suffering was attachment. I was just attaching to so many things that I didn't need or that were out of my control. And once I realized that I didn't need those things anymore, everything just changed entirely. Unfortunately, when you come back to the real world, that starts to come back again. You forget, right? We're all in this human experience and we attach to a lot of things. So,
yeah. Well, that's awesome. I love that. Thank you. Yeah. Kim, do you have some questions that you want to ask?
Yeah. First of all, I resonate so much with the non-attachment piece. It's something that I practice a lot. Never used to. I was a very attached person before. I find it interesting though, when I listen to you share your story, it's like you were very connected to the knowing, it seems, through your life, maybe not consistently, because you mentioned, having the high school boyfriend and knowing he was only going to be your high school boyfriend. And when high school was done, he wouldn't be your boyfriend anymore. Like you had that knowing, and that just kind of not surprised me, but I guess it's not common, because I think at that age, for me anyway, at that age, it was like, oh, this is my forever person, right? Whoever you were with, that was your forever person.
Like, I'm gonna marry.
Yeah, like I can never relate to thinking, oh yeah, this is going to just be my high school person, or this is going to be my early 20s person. But for you to have that awareness, that's really cool. I really think that's super cool.
When I go back to think about that, I think it was a defense mechanism. It was a way to keep myself safe. So I had to have an out, or I couldn't connect in any way with human beings at that point in my life.
Absolutely, that makes sense. And I did kind of think about that, but I found it interesting that you would actually acknowledge that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. How long were you at the ashram? It was 4 weeks?
It was 4 weeks, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Sheila, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by your story, Gillian. Gillian worked at Yoga Central, and the thing that our listeners wouldn't know is that when she taught her class, she was like an angel. People came to her class because she would light this incense, and people were really attached to what you offered. And you had a beautiful essence. And I don't know what people probably didn't know why they were attracted to you, but they really were attracted to you. And that, I think, is part of, you had obviously broken the barrier to open yourself up to let people receive you. And I have to say, I was very conscious of my defense mechanism. I was very conscious that I was walking in the world protecting myself and not letting anyone get too close, because I thought if they got too close, then of course they're not going to like me. I mean, I didn't even like myself. How are they going to like me? So I'm curious, like, I feel different now that I don't carry that with me. And I don't know if I'd call it baggage or whatever that was. It certainly wasn't a natural feeling, but I'm curious if you feel different with that too, because I know people were seriously attracted to you and your classes and how you offered love to everyone. So do you feel different?
Yes, absolutely. I feel so different. And I think for anyone who has to break through trauma in their life or these childhood circumstances, it can feel really dark and heavy. And it was work. Like I can remember my therapist saying things to me, okay, so now you have to do something to take care of you. And I was like, I don't understand what that means. She's like, you have to go for a walk. You have to take a bath. You have to find out what you like and do it. And it was so foreign to me, and I did it anyway. And so I pushed just a little bit more each day to try and break these barriers so that I could understand what it felt like to come to the other side. And I'm so glad I did, because the light at the other side, it's not just, we talk about the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's physically feeling lighter. It's like you stop carrying around people's stuff. It's not my stuff. That wasn't my stuff when I was 6 years old or 8 years old or whenever these things happened. They didn't belong to me, and someone else put them on me. And that wasn't fair. And I got to give it back. I got to give all of that back and then be able to walk through this world being myself. And the one thing when you bring up yoga and teaching yoga, I always think about teaching yoga. And now that I've been listening to your podcasts regularly, and I've been really connecting with this idea of channeling, and that I didn't really understand what it meant before. And then I had this aha moment during one of your podcasts a couple weeks ago where I said to myself, oh, it's all just channeling. So when I walk into a yoga room and I don't know where those words came from, they just came out and I just let them come out. I don't use that vocabulary regularly. That was me channeling, right? That was something else coming through to tell people what they needed to know at that moment. And the same thing happens in a past life regression. People will talk about it being hypnosis, and they come to me and they say, I'm so nervous that I can't be hypnotized. And there's all this stress over hypnosis and what it means. And now I've just come to believe that they're just channeling. They're just open. All you need to do is open up, and whatever needs to come through will come out, right? And it's really, really beautiful. So I say thank you for saying that people saw the light in me in yoga, but I also always thought that it wasn't mine, that I was just the person who brought it forward.
That's so funny that you say that, Gillian, because actually the next thing I was going to ask you about is I was going to say one of the similarities that you and I have in our stories is that the first thing that I ever did, the first spiritual modality I ever picked up was yoga as well. And when I did it, I actually did it. And again, just like you, didn't want to teach, but I wanted to take yoga teacher training, even though I'd never done a yoga class before, because that's the great idea, right? That's a great idea. But I so desperately felt lost and wanted to get out of my house. And I had 2 little babies at home, and I just needed something for me that's what I was drawn to. And I was drawn to the philosophy, and I wanted to learn all those things. And so the second or third weekend, I think it was, our instructor was like, okay, well, we're going to start with inversions today. And for those of you that are watching that don't know what that is, that's like headstand, handstand, anywhere where your hips are basically over your head and you're upside down. But I leaned over to the person next to me and I was like, what's an inversion? And she's like, oh, headstand to handstand. And I was like, oh, fuck. No clue what I had gotten myself into. And looking back, now I can understand. And I had the exact same experiences. That was how I started to open my channel. And the same thing happened to me. I would say things and people would be like, oh my God, can you tell me about blah, blah, blah again? I'd be like, what? I didn't even remember what I had said.
Yeah.
Right. And that was the question I was going to ask you, is if you had that same experience of it being that activator, I guess, or that catalyst. So funny that you just brought it up on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so fascinating. And then you walk out of a room and you feel so light and you're like, what just happened in there? I hope everyone had a good time, because I feel great. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure what happened.
Yeah. So
I can definitely relate to that. And I think you nailed it when you said you have to be open to be able to do that. That's the key. Right. And I mean, I've even had that come through from spirit through I do QHHT sessions as well. And that was one of the things that they said is you have to be open to receive. And they talked about you have to oil the hinges so the door can open. Right. And the one question I want to ask you is coming back to this whole piece on non-attachment and practicing non-attachment, because I think we can all agree we live in a world of attachment. we're taught attachment, and it's a hard thing to break, to let go of. And for me, it's freedom. Non-attachment is freedom, and I couldn't go back. But I'm curious, I would love to know, because I know we have people listening or watching that are wondering, okay, how do I practice non-attachment? How do I let go? Is there something specific that worked for you, or what do you tell your clients to think about, or to do, or to practice to move towards non-attachment? And I know there's not maybe one answer, everybody's different, but
I can go all over the place. I was listening to this week, the podcast where you guys were flipping cards, and you went into guilt, right? And then you talked about guilt is cause harm, intention to cause harm, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, then when you start to think of feelings, because attachment is really internal. So having those little tools or cues to remind you that you don't need to attach, right? Did I mean to cause harm? Because you're walking around, you're feeling whatever this attachment is, you're attached to something you've lost, or attached to a guilty feeling that you're feeling, and having little tools to remind you that you didn't do something wrong, or you don't need it. It's not serving you anymore. And I think that's the biggest tool I use in my life, is just going back to, is this serving me, right? And it's challenging. I mean, I have 2 small children, and physical attachment it's being taught to them so young, and they're so attached. They want stuff and stuff. Every time we leave the house, they think we should buy stuff and bring physical stuff home. And I keep trying to explain it's not going to make them happy, right? And that experiences together are what's going to make us all happy. It's challenging. It's just embedded into us so young, and we just have to take all the tools we can collect for our toolbox and keep using the one that fits in that moment, I think.
That's such a valuable point about the parenthood piece, right? Because I don't know about you, but well, I do know about you, you just shared that, but I mean, I'm a grandma now, so I mean, it's been a long time since my kids were babies, but I didn't know any of this stuff back then. But had I known, I would have done things way differently. And I think that is, maybe it's the magic we have in today's time, is the ability for parents to become more aware and to break these cycles of the patterns and the teachings of attachment, like it sounds like you're doing, is trying to change that, right? Focusing more on the values and the experiences within, and not relying on these external objects to bring the happiness, the joy, the comfort, or whatever it is. So there's such a huge opportunity, I think, right now for young parents to bring change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So if we switch gears a little bit now, because I know we've mentioned QHHT a little bit, and we've mentioned it in previous episodes too, because it's one of the things that Kim offers and whatnot. I would love to hear, because we've had a few guests on that have spoken to this and have had different spiritual views. So what is your spiritual view on reincarnation or incarnation? What does that look like for you?
Well, I definitely believe in reincarnation. I believe, I mean, like I said before, I believe we get to choose. I don't believe that all of our lives are here on this earth. I think the universe is a very big place. And my experience with past life regression has shown me some very interesting places that I have been that haven't been on earth. And a really interesting story to tie into that is that the first time I did a past life regression, I had gone from one place and I drifted off. They tell you to go to another place, and I end up there and I say, I think I'm just at the sun. Like, I think I'm just at the sun. I don't know. I'm at the sun. I'm attached, and they're like, okay, are you floating by the sun? Is the sun over you? I'm like, no, I am attached to the sun. I can feel this pulsing energy, and we are one, and this is happening. And it's so beautiful. And they're saying, what happens next? I'm like, nothing. I just want to stay here all day. Like, this is amazing. I feel so beautiful. And then the regression goes on. I go somewhere else. And every now and then I think about how beautiful it was to feel like I was part of the sun. And then a few weeks back, I do some channeling with Sheila, and she's telling me to remind myself to stay grounded. And she said, it's weird. They're bringing forth the sun and they're saying you have a really special relationship with the sun. And it's different from other people's relationship where, you know, they're worried about getting burnt or whatever it is with the sun. They're saying you and the sun have this really special bond. And I just laughed and I said, yeah, I know. I was part of the sun. I remember. And I have that feeling. And not necessarily that the physical sun will ground me, which it will, but remembering that energy feeling of being something else. And so that happens to me quite often in regressions is these stories come up about places that are not here, and work that is happening elsewhere that's all about creating energy and spirituality and evolving all of us in different ways. And so my belief system has expanded a lot since I have dove into QHHT, which I also did that thing where I was like, I love this. I want to learn how to do it before ever having a regression. I forced myself to get my first regression before I did it, but I knew right away I wanted to learn everything about it because I was just so fascinated and just so connected instantly to the entire experience.
So are you
I've never, sorry, one more thing. I've never met anyone who did not have a past life, right? That there wasn't a reincarnation when they came to see me. So the belief that we're all reincarnated in some way, shape, or form is really strong with me.
Yeah, perfect. Sheila, did you have a question that you wanted to ask Gillian?
Well, I just want to comment because I get messages from Kim all the time because she's doing this past life regression. And she is so excited. And I see how excited you are. And I think that you two are onto something. Like, I think, well, of course, you're passionate about it, right? You're both into it. Tracy, do you do past life regressions too?
I do. Yeah. But I do a different, they're not QHHT. Yeah.
So we have 3 powerful women in this room. I don't do past life regressions, but I talk to the dead. I talk to the people of past. So we have a group of women here that really, it's really fun to be with women that we all are passionate about similar things, and we're all accepting of everyone's things. So to see the joy in your response to this work, and to see, I know Tracy's very passionate about her work, and Kim as well. So yeah, I'm just thanking you for your passion. I love to be in the energy of this. And for people that are listening, some of this stuff sounds wonky and crazy, and here you have 4 legitimate women that do this wonky, crazy stuff, and it makes it not so crazy. You know, it makes it more legitimate, I think. Mm-hmm. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, I think it's one of those things, and Gillian, you know, you shared the beautiful story about the sun and then how it came through in your session with Sheila. And I think that, you know, for me anyways, that's part of the experience of why I'm so passionate and so excited about it, is because number one, anytime I enter any kind of past life session where I'm working to clear Akashic records, or I'm doing past life regression, whatever that is, the synchronicities are just like, you can't make that shit up, right? When it comes forward and my client is like, oh my God, how did you know that? Right? Like, the proof is in the pudding kind of thing. Right. And that's what makes me so excited, is I finish the session and I'm like, I'm just as mind blown as the client, right? Because they came through and I'm like, who knew? It's just another day at the office, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting too. So my ego mind during past life regressions will always make up stories about what they're seeing. I'm like, oh, and this is why this is happening. And then they start talking and I'm like, I have no idea, first of all, what's happening. So this isn't, you know, this is so unique to the person, but also it's always the same in the sense that they're given the most beautiful information to help move their life forward in this present time. This life, not any other life. It is all about giving them love and light and joy. And that never changes session to session. And it's so beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I actually have a question for all 3 of you, because I'm super fascinated to know what the answer is. So in terms of the work that we all do, and it could be the talking to the dead, or it could be, but so have you had experiences with a client where they have been something that is not human? Meaning that could be animal, could be alien, could be like anything. Kim, what?
Yeah. Well, I myself did a past life as a client where I was an alien. I've had a client who, one of her lives, she was a dragon. And then I've had, I think, two that when they went into their regression, they were, how they were describing it was basically like, I would say, like the seed of the soul. Very much like your connection to the sun, Gillian, just this little light floating in space, feeling so wonderful and so much love and not wanting to leave that space. To where the next part of the journey for one of them was actually going into the womb and then eventually birthing. But yeah, you just never know. And that's what's cool for me. And I don't know, Jillian, if it's like this for you, but going into a session with a client, it's almost like watching a movie where you get that little bit of information. And then the great thing is you get to ask the questions just to get more of the movie, right? And it's just like, and in my mind, I'm picturing what they're seeing. And it's interesting to see at the end how all the pieces fit together and how it makes so much sense of what's going on in their life right now. And then, of course, to hear the subconscious come in with more information is just mind-blowing. Yeah.
And Gillian, have you had experiences where they haven't been human?
Yes. I in all of my personal experiences, I actually only once was human. So my experiences are that I haven't been on this earth very many times. I'm not even sure if that one human experience was real because it was very confusing about who I was. And so sometimes we talk about how you can just imprint information.
Yes.
And bring it in with you. So I would say 50%. I think now we're more open and people are much more accepting of the fact that there's more out there in the universe. And then that from there, the consciousness will bring that forward because they can handle that information. Whereas when you read Dolores Cannon's books from years ago, or even her training, she talks a lot about it being human experiences and that we're just on the verge of getting away from that. And now I think we're moving really fast into a new consciousness.
So what are you usually then?
Oh, always something different. I was an alien and my job was to take my blood. I don't know what it was. So it was fluid out from my body. So we would take it out of our bodies and then we would go to different planets and we would take that energy and we would put it into beings who were struggling and we would help to elevate their vibration without them knowing it. And so we would just travel around and then create. So that's one of the many things.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Really neat.
Okay. And Sheila, what about you?
I don't think I've had any aliens I usually channel past people, but I guess I'm open to it. And I think it's super exciting that, we're so limited by how we think linear, like that why couldn't there be the possibility of these people coming and helping us and letting us live longer? We've all had experience, all of us, I'm sure in this room, of different challenges in our physical form lately. Feeling, what we call the DNA changing, shifting. We have no idea who's helping us with that. We don't know what do we know? But I like to be, like we talked with another guest on our podcast, Stephen Muir, being open to everything and closed off to nothing. And not saying, Gillian, that's impossible. How could that happen? Because I don't understand how it can happen. Doesn't mean it couldn't. I think it's really nice to be with others that share that philosophy, that the possibility of talking to aliens, talking to others, whatever we're talking to, like open yourself up to it and let it come. And I guarantee if you're the person receiving that experience, you wouldn't doubt it in that moment. Mm-hmm. You would feel it, you would know it. Maybe when you come out of the experience, everything around you will talk you out of it and say that didn't happen. But when you're in that experience, there's no doubting it.
Yeah. Yeah. Just watch.
Tracy, you'll have to ask Sheila that tomorrow after our session.
She's doing a session for me tomorrow.
I was just about to say, just watch, Sheila. Next time we come together to do another recording, you're going to be like, oh my God, I channeled the Galactic Collective and guess what they said? And I'm going to be like, oh, were they reptilians or what were they? Were they Lemurians? And you're going to be like, oh my God. So we just opened up the whole floodgates for you.
Yeah.
Welcome. Be welcome.
Enjoy.
Oh, that's super cool. Awesome. So, Gillian, if there was one thing that you could really like leave as, a maybe the word is a poignant message for our listeners that are watching in whatever realm that is, just based on your experience and what you've been through, what would that be?
I think it's definitely listening to the messages, right? And being open to the universe is very happy to guide you on your way if you're listening. If you open up and you accept what's being brought forward, then life becomes a lot easier, right? We're not swimming upstream constantly trying to figure out the whys or why this person said what or did that or why we're in this job or any of those things, right? If we just flow with the river and let the universe take us, magic happens. Things become so beautiful. And so I would just, that would be my message, just to let the universe guide you.
I love that. You got any tips on money manifestation? Just like a little side note, because I'd like to win the lottery.
Be clear on how much you want to win, or you're going to get $1.
Be specific.
Fair enough.
I love that lottery story.
That's a really good one. I really like that. That's definitely a lesson in using clarity and specificity in your manifestations.
The universe can be sarcastic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'll teach us the hard way sometimes.
Totally. Absolutely. So Kim or Sheila, do you have any more questions that you want to ask Gillian before we let her go for the day?
I just want to say thank you, Gillian. And we haven't connected prior to today, so I'm excited to connect more, and maybe we can do some QHHT work together and see what other magic can unfold. But thank you for sharing your story, and I really resonate with everything that you shared, and I'm grateful that you came on today.
Thank you.
Sheila?
I just want to thank Gillian for being her. Like, she's never not been her since I've met her, and she shows up as the sun, as the light. It all makes so much sense. So I honor that, and I appreciate you being vulnerable and telling that story, because I had a hard time for a long time telling my story. It was embarrassing to me. It was shameful. It was something that I tried to keep hidden for a long, long time. And you're much younger than I was when you exposed yourself, and you realize how powerful it is and how powerful sharing that with others. I know you shared with me when we had Lee as a guest, how that, really changed your perspective and helped you through some things. So I'm sure you're going to help a lot of people with just sharing that story. So thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And Gillian, how can people connect with you?
Well, if you're interested in doing a QHHT session, I mean, obviously you can contact me on my website. If you're thinking that it's kind of scary and something you're not willing to commit to, in June, I'm doing the Beaumont Wellness Retreat, and I'm doing a group regression, which is really fun. So you get to do a whole day of yoga and all this amazing breath work, and then you get to do just an hour-long group regression. So that's a really neat way to dip your toes in as well. But yeah.
Awesome. And your website is?
So it's awakenpastlife.ca.
Awesome. Beautiful. Thank you. Well, thank you so much. I know I speak for Sheila and Kim as well when I say that we're all so super grateful that you were willing to come on and to share your story today, and that we appreciate your energy and your presence and your wisdom. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And for our listeners, thank you for listening. And you can drop in comments. You can even drop some questions that you'd like to ask Gillian if you'd like on our Facebook page, and we can take her there for you, and she can hop on and connect with you there. And drop your own spiritual views on today's show as well, because all views are welcome on the Spiritual View. And have a lovely long weekend for those of you that applies to. And we will see you all next week. Bye.
Namaste.